Hi, everybody. This is DeSo in the Eyes of beHODLers and its host, Matryoshka.
Ready Player One.
And today we have a very special guest. It's a friend of ours and a person who doesn't like to be defined by one thing anymore, since he's doing so much. It's Darian Parrish. Welcome, Darian.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for
You're very welcome. And you were one of the very first test people who were on the podcast in the very beginning, when Fast Freddy launched the competition to promote DeSo to people outside of DeSo. So we already had you, but since when we kind of evolved and it became a little bigger. So we are really, really excited to have you here and to talk to you a little more about everything that you're actually doing.
Well, I'm glad it's become bigger. That's a good sign and testament to the hard work you've been putting in. So thanks for all you do.
Sure.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And let's start with just like introducing you to people and sharing a little bit about your story, how you got into crypto in the first place, and your story in crypto and BitCloud and then DeSo, if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, so as far as my background, I've been in technology and finance for more than the last decade, and really starting in technology, and then I got my MBA and master's in strategic management and MBA in finance, and then I had a hedge fund where I did public equities and systematic public equities investing, sort of blending the technology and data science together with finance there. So for me, anything that was at the intersection of technology and finance was interesting, and that's where crypto came in. Also, just doing a lot of economic analysis for macro investing in my fund. You know, crypto was very interesting, and this was around 2016. 2015 were sort of the early stages of it, and that was sort of Ethereum just being born, right? So really, there wasn't all these other cryptos. It was just Bitcoin, which I had already been mining some Bitcoin just as sort of a side project, and then being interested in hardware and software, and then Ethereum coming into view was I think a changing point for me. Just the notion of smart contracts and what was possible there, and then really open source software development. A lot of the stuff we were building was in Linux, and just had a background in being interested in open source projects. A lot of the data science packages have always been open source as well. So just being a contributor there really got me interested in the ethos of crypto. And so it's been a long journey as I sort of tilted towards crypto, and then sort of moved more from TradFi into crypto. And unfortunately, it took a very long time to where I didn't really fully jump in till I guess probably right before the pandemic.
Were you following Ethereum enough at the time to know about the DAO hack when it happened?
Yes, absolutely. So and again, these were things that only happened a little bit in my periphery, right? Because I was already working 80+ hours a week on TradFi stuff, really like high stress environment, investors calling, margin calls, all the stuff that you don't want to have happen in your life. So it wasn't really easy to pay attention to stuff outside of my focus. And that's actually one of the things that I think has changed a little bit with Web3 is all founders and operators are trying to have a wider view, where they're seeing things that aren't just in their subject matter expertise. I think it's a bit of a blessing and a curse. Like, in order to perform well, you really do have to be sort of blinders on. And I think this is one of the things that people don't really understand about Natter's style, is he does get those blinders on, and that's a superpower. It's really a curse at some times, and that's a blessing at other times. So it's hard to be everything to everyone as a founder, but right now everyone's expected to be really wide. We're asking founders about their political views and things like that. It's like, when you get in the zone and you're working these long hours, it's like you got to be on task. So I think I didn't get. That's why I really waited until I freed myself up of other commitments to spend more time on crypto.
Makes sense. And then for BitCloud specifically, how did that come into your view? How did that?
Yes. So I was partnered with someone from Madrona Venture Group here in Seattle, which was the first investor in Amazon, and doing some essentially leading edge technology consulting with them. And then a partner from there and me launched a firm that was researching Web3 technologies, and we sort of came across BitClout in our research. Now that happened, I think, via Twitter. So you could say like it was more. That's actually where research happens now. is some of it's on Twitter, and then also even I was getting deep in the weeds by doing lunch clubs, which was sort of like what VibeHut does now, with scheduled meetings of strangers. And I put my tag as interested in crypto and emerging technologies and Web3. And someone there mentioned it, and I think that is what got me to actually use it. So I saw it on Twitter. It got on the list of all the technologies we were researching, and then someone in person, which is I really value in-person connection and relationships. They said, I got on here. It's password protected. You can't get on right now unless you have the password, but here's the password. I think I waited like right until the password rolled off or something, because again, the queue was very long of stuff I had to research. And then when I got in, I ended up liking it more than I thought. Again, the intersection of finance and technology, it jived really well for me. And so I dove in more than I would normally with research, right? When you have 100 different things you're researching, you normally can't spend hours per day on one of them. But BitClout was that compelling. So it drew me in, and I've been here ever since.
That's awesome. And I love that you mentioned that you only actually started using it after somebody in person mentioned it. We were talking with Demarie, Cassius, and Triplet. We are, founding a DeSo street team, which would actually have DeSo presence at all the crypto events. Because as of right now, since Alex kind of transitioned out of being that person who was that for DeSo for a while, there is nobody really, as far as we know, unless, of course, they're still doing it, but don't tell us about this, which is also possible. People who are actually representing DeSo at the events where people actually hear that there is DeSo, like you heard that there is BitClout, and somebody real actually told you that they're using it, because although Twitter is our public square town hall thing, where, like you mentioned, people even do research now, which is a little fascinating to me, because you wouldn't think of social media as a reliable source of research, but at the same time, that's the age we live in. And we came to the same conclusion that people are only more likely to start using it and actually use it when you in person introduce it to them, because it's very different than just reading it on Twitter. Somebody tweeted about this, and actually meeting real life person who told you, oh yeah, I'm using it, I'm loving it. It can give you tips instead of likes, and it's depending on what people like. If you're tech people, you tell them about layer one technology and all of that. So I just love that you mentioned that, and I think that this is a very important point in getting people to be more in DeSo, is introducing it in person and at the events where people who are interested in intersectionality of technology and information and finance are gathered, because this is the primarily audience that we're still I think like the most.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of work to be done, with street teams and just spreading the word. And then I think video platforms are great, because even though it's not physical in person, you can sort of tell if someone's a bot or fake or not on video. So definitely, VibeHut's kind of leading the way for DeSo on that. And I think now it's just a matter of getting more outbound, having Twitter users come into a space with people on DeSo. There's a little bit of Clubhouse going on that in the early days of BitClout. We haven't sort of revisited that as much. I know Mr. Triplet's done a bit of that, but again, that's audio only. It's helpful. It's better than just text, but I say taking it to an even higher level of video makes it that much more compelling.
Yeah, absolutely. And with Chris adding functionality of logging in with Twitter and MetaMask, it makes it much easier to invite people from Twitter over, because instead of them going through the process of creating seed phrase and all of that, which people still sometimes be lacking in desire to do things, to join, because they want everything quick and easy and fast. That is very helpful. I absolutely agree with you, and kudos to Chris. Thank you for doing that. What you're doing, we love that, our Canadian brother. And so you mentioned about video. Let's transition towards one of the things that you're doing is the Genius or Insanity podcast. Tell us a little bit about this and how you guys decided to come up with this idea and what you discuss on there.
Yeah, so this was Salil's idea. I don't know how much of the backstory he wants me to share, but I think the general idea was that we both are in the space doing things on other blockchains as well. And so is Maz, and he was a big DeSoer, BitClouder in the time. And so it was, nice to sort of reunite. And Maz and Salil actually had a show before. But I have a project on Ethereum. I'm doing some smart contract development work on Ethereum. So he just thought it was good for some data folks, some collectors to convene and talk about the space. And I think, that we're still working on finding our total unique angle. We're going to bring a lot more data, but to some extent, we don't want to put the audience to sleep, right? So we got to make that in a very digestible way and help highlight some insights that everyone's not looking at, not just trading volume, not just, floor price. That's sort of been the challenge of the NFT space, is it's really like myopic in its focus. And I think we want people to, even though they might be new to the space, to learn like the metrics that might help them make better trades or understand, why a project has value. So we're working through that, but it's been a fun ride so far.
Something I've actually noticed in my research for my podcast that I'm doing, Creatonomics, is more and more, like, how you said about certain founders going, like, having a myopic view and going deeper rather than wider. Like, actually more and more content creators and people who make content online, they're having to go deeper, wider rather than deeper. Like like you said, like, some people might not want to hear a long form explanation, but you can still have that conversation and then chop it up into smaller pieces, maybe put it on TikTok or on YouTube Shorts. And then like, even people who just had YouTube channels before, now starting their own podcasts as well. It's just very interesting, like, how you have to think about how there's so much distribution now and so many ways to reach consumers, but they also have so much choice. It's very interesting having to think about who your audience is.
Yeah, I think one of the challenges of going wide is you start to lose a little bit of your brand identity. So from a marketing standpoint, and another part of my background, my last company, I was by title the chief marketing officer. So I did a lot more. I was basically head of product, but leading the marketing effort there, a lot of it is brand identity or even product identity, or just having a really singular focus on what the use case is. But that applies to creators a lot. When you know why you go and watch a creator, it makes it a lot easier to surface that in your mind. So if I think about the lists I create on Twitter, I use TweetDeck to do that. The people that are most likely to show up in one of my lists are ones that I can easily categorize. Like, this person is crypto, this person is Web3. A generalist, I'm kind of a generalist, and that's why I make for a really bad creator in some senses, is that, like, I'm passionate about just about everything. I have a guitar back here, I play music, I used to build race cars, race street bikes, cars. Like, I've done a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of interests. And chances are, if you bring up a topic, I'm going to be able to talk about it or write about it. But that doesn't serve well when you're trying to, connect. That'll help you connect well in a crowd, and maybe you can mingle well. But it doesn't help you build a strong, loyal following that really cares about the stuff you talk about. So I think, I don't know how to be a good creator, so I won't give any advice there, other than I think I know what I'm doing wrong, which is the brand identity. And maybe just from observation, it seems like the people who are having success seem to have a really good handle on what their audience likes that they do, and what is that specific niche they cover. And they, even though they widen a little bit over time, just because they can as their audience grows, until they get to that critical level, at the start, they're very focused on that niche.
Yeah, that's fair. But don't sell yourself short. Genius or Insanity is it's a really good show. Like,
yeah, well, thank you.
You guys have really good chemistry too.
Yeah, the goal there is, like, we have kept it focused, on the NFT space. We're not talking about general crypto stuff. We did bring in a little bit of the Terra Luna stuff the other episode, just because that was on everyone's mind, and it was leading to a bit of contagion in the NFT space. but like
It's
we
kind of
actually
a black hole sucking the whole
Yeah,
crypto
yeah.
world
it
in.
was, but we did cut it a bit shorter. We'll tell give away the secrets. We edited that down a bit. I think I had like 10 minutes on that or something, 5 minutes, and we edited down to like 30 seconds or something, just because like, you know, we didn't want to bore the niche. You know, there's a lot of mechanisms in there that were interesting to maybe me or other crypto folks, but not as much the NFT space. It's more about the outcomes. Like that's always the way, like, I think everyone should ask them is like, why does this matter for me? Or why does this matter for your audience? And that always helps keep it sharp. Is, you know, if you ask that question and you can't answer it, then you got to cut that out in the editing process.
Yeah, it's fair.
It is, and I love I watched the very first episode that you did about the moonbirds, and I absolutely loved it, and I love the chemistry. I love that the Maz is back. Welcome back, Maz. I know he's been doing stuff on other blockchains, but I didn't see him as much on DeSo. And like you mentioned, he used to have a podcast, and I used to watch it, and it was, you know, one of the things that I loved watching about DeSo. So it's really great to see you're free together, and I'm glad that Salil wanted to create it and that you guys did, because I really enjoyed it, and I really like it, and I think it's great that you're doing it, especially that you're doing it not just about DeSo, and specifically not about DeSo, but about other NFT projects, because I love the idea of spreading DeSo to people outside of DeSo, and I think when DeSo people do stuff that talks about other chains, other elements of Web3 space, it's very, very important. So thank you once again for doing it. We love you for doing that.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree that we need some people who bridge the gap. We have some people who have kind of left under the guise that they're going to bring people back into DeSo, and we probably know that's not necessarily true. But then we have some people who, you know, keep a foot in DeSo pretty strongly, and then go out and sort of recruit or get some surface area that's outside that they can draw people in with. And I think that's really good. So I do agree. We need people sort of on all fronts, and then still not abandoning DeSo, still using DeSo and being really connected with the community, and then using their platform outside of DeSo to help educate and raise awareness around what DeSo is and how it could be used for some of the things they might want to do, whether it's an NFT project, whether it's, you know, launching a DAO. I spend a lot of time on DAO stuff now too, and obviously we have DAODAO launching soon, so that's going to be another thing. Tomorrow, yep. Yeah. I think we just get like the beta launch, so the public won't be coming in quite yet, but I'm excited to start using the tooling and see how it works for DAOs I'm a part of.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, that kind of brings us over to the main topic that we wanted to discuss with you today is the DeSo community DAO. So for those of guys who are watching who don't know what it is exactly what it sounds. It's DeSo community that is a DAO. So DAO is decentralized autonomous organization, and this is a way how people together can come to a consensus, or using the simpler language, if you don't know what consensus is, how people can agree on something together. So it's like a lot of people coming together in Web3 space. That's one of the tools, amazing tools, that allows people easily to vote on things and to make decisions together as a group. If you guys feel free to add more to that, super simple explanation to people who have no idea what DAOs is.
Well, I was just going to say, if you want a longer explanation, we did a video on DAOs with Lisa Mariette that people can check out on the channel too, after you're done watching this video. But for sure, yeah, DAOs are, well, no, I'll let you.
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, I'll second that. You should watch the video with Lisa, because I love Lisa, and I think I caught part of that, but I'll talk to Lisa on the regular, and we'll do a video call, because Lisa's very intelligent, very passionate, and that's the kind of people you meet on DeSo that it makes it worth it, right? You spent a lot of time here, but you gained a lot of value from being on DeSo. So definitely listen to Lisa. As far as DAOs go, I mean, I think I don't want to rerun the DAO. What is a DAO here? Because really, I think a DAO can be used for anything you want to do with it. You know, there is the components, right? You want it to be decentralized. The autonomous component is what most people are figuring out. Organization, I think that's kind of an obvious one, because it's really, it parlays to Web2 or even just any other organization. You know, so I think the autonomous part is still even what DAODAO will try and figure out, which is tooling to help automate the process of how it can operate. So when someone makes a vote or a decision is made, it can be executed. Now, DAODAO won't do that initially, but even just getting voting on chain is a big step. In Ethereum, the main kind of player there is Snapshot, which doesn't have on-chain voting for the most part. There's kind of some on-chain stuff happening there now, but that's been kind of one of the holdups is, you know, the blockchain and the public open data is the value. That's kind of the value of a lot of things that happen in the blockchain. If you then go take a bunch of stuff off chain, you lose some of that value in terms of having like a public record of what happened. So for the DeSo community DAO, I'll get to how that started, but we post everything on chain for now, even before DAODAO. So if a decision is made, it goes on chain, and that gives everyone to see what the final outcome is. Now, if there's some sort of discrepancy, you might say, well, what happened off chain, and then how did that come on chain? Well, any one of the members can go dispute that because it's all on chain. They can go comment there and say, wait, I didn't see this many votes for this to pass, you know, what happened there. So I think, you know, having things on chain is just a good thing for transparency. Going back to just the start of DeSo community DAO, I think we needed a community effort that was something that we knew would persist. One of the cool things about a DAO is the idea is that it should persist in perpetuity. So unlike a company, when things kind of run out of funding, you see a company just die off. And the main reason is because like a single person, like the board, or a few single set of a concentrated group like the board or something, can just decide to shut down the company, and the products and services you loved, all the users, all the employees just sort of cease to exist or have to go their separate ways. The idea is that shouldn't necessarily happen with the DAO, because any one member can sort of rise up and continue like taking it in the direction it should be going. And it's not just the board voting on it, it's all the members. So I think that's a really important key point here, is that the DeSo community DAO should persist and keep the community going forever. And even if the core should leave or abandon the project, would actually take over DeSo as a project and continue developing the blockchain and you know, serve the role of just making DeSo persist. So I think that's one cool thing about open source software. Cool thing about DAOs is that, like, in theory, these projects should last forever.
Yeah, or at the very worst, you hard fork it.
Yeah, and that could be a different case, right? Where you get some sort of other body where it's you don't want power to be centralized either. So right now we have a core team where there's centralized power. This is a decentralized social. We need there to be decentralized power too. So that means multiple DAOs with power, not even just the DeSo community DAO. Some other, you know, let's call it a country DAO. It could be South America DeSo DAO or something, and they have significant power that decentralizes it away from both the core team and the DeSo community DAO. So there's like a, you know, sort of an, I guess, philosophy here where you want it to, you can say something's decentralized, but then you have to actually, you know, decentralize all aspects. That's not just the tech stack. It's also the voting authority or the actual decision-making power, or even the influence that might come even if you don't have decision-making power. And so that's a big part of DeSo community DAO is we said we can't be reliant on other people to determine our destiny. Like, everyone should want to have a little bit of control over their own destiny. So then the other sort of more logistical reason is we want to be able to help put inertia or get a critical inertia around initiatives that someone who's really passionate has put forward to the community, and they just don't go anywhere. And it's really frustrating because a lot of people will agree that's a great initiative and they kind of like it, and then they disappear, right? So then it's just one person trying to carry that torch. There's strength in numbers. So if we have a community DAO that can then support those initiatives, they can get driven to completion or until they come to fruition. And that's a good thing for the ecosystem. So we need more, you know, filtering mechanisms, more people who are thoughtful about that. And then we need incentive mechanisms around that. Right now, there haven't been enough dev bounties on DeSo. And if, you know, the core team's not going to create bounties, then the DeSo community DAO has to create bounties. So I think, you know, we can kind of complain or, you know, call out problems, or we can just go solve them. And I think that's the goal that we're trying to do with the community DAO.
I love that. And I love that, you know, like taking the power in your own hands, because you already actually created a previous thing that was geared towards similar thing, which was DeSo Voices back in the day. And I love taking it to the new level, especially with the DAOs coming out, because it does seem that it is necessary. And I love the idea that even if core team dies or goes off, or something happens, which we all hope it won't, but we all live in real world and we know that things don't always go the way we want them to. So just being realistic and knowing how world works, if that happens, it's amazing having a group of people who can actually take over and continue to do the path and continue to still realize that vision that we have and that we share. Because although we can have different political views or some other views, it doesn't really matter if we share the common vision of building DeSo that would be helpful to entire human nation. So I absolutely once again love that you're doing it. I have a question to you in regards with not DAO, but something else actually, but I'll tie it up later. So you know how I don't know if you've seen the latest episode of oh my God, who was it who was interviewing Musk about the All In podcast?
I saw it.
Okay, awesome. So then you heard how Elon shared about that he thinks that WeChat is basically the ideal app, that he thinks has everything that's needed for people to succeed, and that he basically WeChat. It's a
No, I'm saying like a super app.
Super app. Yeah. That will be able to do everything together. So how far do you think DeSo is from becoming WeChat, which right now it is pretty far, I think, but I'm curious at your opinion. And do you think that DeSo can become something like that?
Yeah, so I think if there's going to be a super app, I'd like it to be decentralized. So one of the things that DeSo does well is give a protocol for people to build on top of, just like any other blockchain. And what that means is there should be some standardization around that, and there is for DeSo. There's certain, if you're using just the API, there's certain methods you can call and you can't call, and then the protocol itself has specifications for how data gets submitted and what data types there are, and as someone called them, primitives. So that helps. Whether it goes into one app, that's just someone like essentially bundling everything together, right? So you and making sure that the interface is sort of clean to use the few. So like, for example, Thorsten builds a lot of tools that look very similar and use very similar technologies. And in theory, you can make a unified app that just has all the Thorsten apps in it really easily, and they would all like kind of be the same style, and you'd be able to use them in the same browser because they're all compatible. You can do the same thing across other products. The challenge is that when they look and feel very different, it won't be like WeChat. They won't be that similar. So instead, what I think will happen is you'll get a layer of abstraction on top of that. So like Open Prosper will essentially power the analytics in the super app, but it won't look like Open Prosper because it's all not to offend Salil, it's all like pink and like has its own character. But like, I'm not saying that design's bad, but it's not going to fit with another design that's all I don't know, green or blue or whatnot, right? So and it's not just the UI, it's not just like the color styles or the brand style guide. It's also just like the way data is laid out in the user experience within that. We have a lot of UX designers on the platform. We got Clay, we have Yazin who did chime in. We have quite a few designers, and I was a designer to some extent leading product, and so I think the user experience has to make sense. So basically you would have all these apps within the super app that are powered by Prosper Cloud, powered by DeSocial World. And then you get like a really smooth user experience that really is decentralized. It's all the apps of DeSo, but in one, like, to the user, it's just one app. Whatever you call that, whatever it is, it's just like essentially the DeSo ecosystem. You click into that and you can do anything. You can look at analytics, you can make posts, you can do video, you can do photo. Bitcast, which Patrick has made, has aggregation of videos, and whether they're on DeSo or on YouTube or anything, if they're posted on DeSo. So you could go to the Bitcast tab on there and you would see all the videos. So I think we're, someone, if they really wanted to, could build that right now. And it wouldn't, you may be missing some component, but instead the question is, what app is missing from the ecosystem? And then that will tell you what's missing from the super app. And that's how I like to think about it.
Additional follow-up question. Do you think that it would be helpful? Like you said, we already had tons of those apps that already exist that are different and just in different places. And as far as I know, the social world are the only one who actually started integrating more of this, because they added VibeHub.io there, they added GD virtual galleries, and the feed with the languages. So, they are the very first one to incorporate more of the stuff that we already have in existence. But I think that a lot of people who are joining, they have no idea about this. And unless somebody actually makes a post, hey, welcome to DeSo, those are all those awesome creators that you might follow. And thank you to Yelena Marshallan for compiling that list in the first place, by the way. They don't really know that it exists. So do you think that it would be helpful to actually add those, like not just have Open Prosper as a separate website as we have it right now, right? But to actually have ways for people to actually see that it exists and like direct them there, like on the left column in, the menu or somewhere in there where they can, then I feel that we can kind of start having this super app faster coming together, because then majority of people would be exposed and know that, you can actually do it. And that if you use Gem Story, that brutal build, you can also already post your pictures on Twitter from DeSo, which you can't do from other places. It just shows the link to the DeSo post when you use Overcloud. So like things like that.
Yeah, so I think this is a question of balancing between overwhelming the user and being helpful. So, you can add resources to essentially call it discovery, and that's helpful to the extent that they're needing those at their fingertips at the moment. When they're not, it's actually just a distraction and it's overwhelming, right? So that's why sometimes the integration is important, where instead of it just being Open Prosper listed on the side and they're like, what is Open Prosper? Instead, it's just the analytics tab within the profile or something. And then it, becomes really obvious how you use that or do that. So I would say that like DeSocial World is definitely leading the charge, and they're probably, they're sort of just bridging it where you still go out to the other platform. It's not really like integrated in the platform. But, that's something that over time, normally that converges. Obviously, there's like a sort of brand battle, and this happens in other companies all the time, where it starts out as like a partnership, then either one gets acquired or one gets integrated, or one white labels their technology. White labeling meaning their brand is not there at all. They just license the underlying tech. So there's a bunch of ways these integrations and combinations happen, and normally the only thing that resolves how that will work out is time. You can have a design element, but there's also just kind of the human nature and the sort of powers that be in the companies that decide how that integration will play out. So I don't know. I do think we can get a standardized way of doing it, and that's one of the things we would like to try and push through DeSo Community DAO, is saying like, how can we make integrations a little bit more straightforward, almost like ERC20s did for tokenizing. Like when you want to make a token, it's really clear how that, what the standards are for that. The same thing might happen here, is like you can create a separate, I guess we'll call it a widget, just for purposes of not getting technical, where it's like that's sort of like a standardized version of your application, and other people can integrate that into their product really easily. And if we do that, then it'll be a little more plug and play, and it won't be these one-offs where it's like, oh, I got to go connect with this other founder or this other product to see if they want to like be in my app. It's just, oh, I go to their site, there's a a widget here or some code here, or the standard here. I can use that for integration. I think that's where we want to go.
Or something.
Oh, what?
An API or something.
Yeah,
like
or even like an API with limited, a limited view, right? So where it's like they get to set what's in the API, and you don't use their full application. You just use some of the features or functionality. I mean, sometimes that's all you need. You don't need all the analytics of Open Prosper. You just need 3 of the metrics or something. But once we standardize that, and again, that's what comes out of like the benefits that come out of organizing the community, is we can agree upon those standards, rather than spending so much time on one-off conversations around the ecosystem and really not ever coming to a consensus. Is we can organize that effort, and then hopefully that encourages progress, because now there's a standard everyone can follow, and it's really easy to adopt.
Mm-hmm. And you actually already answered the question that I was going to ask to title in with the DeSo Community DAO, was how can DeSo Community DAO help in achieving the efforts, but you already kind of answered that. So
yeah, and one of the things I want to touch on is just the way DeSo Community DAO, I think, is a little different than previous efforts, DeSo Voices being one. And I think definitely appreciate, Jason for wanting to get that started and the efforts we did together getting that going. And then Matreshka, of course, for being one of the DeSo voices. I think that experiment was, it came at a time that was a little bit contentious in DeSo's sort of like core team versus community. And then the other challenge was a lot of people hadn't really left BitClout days yet, and they were still like sort of holding on to hope that that was like the main focus. And so there were people who would come in a clubhouse and want to have a vote or a say, yet like I'd go check their activity and they hadn't been active on DeSo for like 10 days or a week, 2 weeks or something. And it's like that became kind of a hang up, because then you have people who aren't really like as passionate about actually moving things forward that are trying to like hinder the process. So we took a different approach this time, which was we want to stay really small. You mentioned before the call that it's like hard to even find DeSo community DAO right now. And that's really by design, is like it's not open to the public yet for just everyone to join from the community, because we wanted to take care of the really like boring stuff first. And it's actually been a struggle to some extent, is that like we're just making sort of the foundational rules, like how does the DAO operate? And that's not exciting for everyone. Like they want to take forward the initiatives that are like more interesting to work on. Just making like kind of the base level, like almost like the founding docs, if you will, or the bylaws of the organization, it's quite boring to some extent. So the idea was we'd get some people in first, we'd kind of build that foundation, and then when everyone came in, it was really clear how they contributed to the DAO. Whereas with the DeSo voices, it was kind of like we just sort of just said, all right, go, like let's see what happens. And it made it really challenging when you have so many people giving feedback. And so now we're able to do this where even with just, I think we're 14 people now, even with 14, voices kind of giving feedback on stuff, it's still hard to like sort of refine a document and come to the final product. So often you sort of have to just subdivide. So it's like, well, 2 people are going to work on something. You can give limited comments, but like realistically, we can only do so many like iterations, and then we just have to vote. Like, either those 2 people did a good job and you want to vote on it, or it's good enough and you still vote, or you don't like it and you don't vote on it, or you vote against it. But like, I think at some point you have to, it's really a balance, or I call it a dial. Sometimes you turn it to like speed versus like perfectionism or something, if you will. And it's like, sometimes you got to like turn the dial towards making progress or speeding up a little bit. And you have to be okay with things not being right the first iteration. And then when more people come into the DAO, you'll go revise those rules and you'll get them right. But I think at first, you can't really focus when there's just a whole inflood of people at the first time. And really no company starts that way, right? You don't start a company with like 300 people on day one.
Yeah.
You always build out. One thing we did want to avoid though is like the initial people are not like the core team of it at all. It's really every member is equal. So even when more people start joining after the 30 days, it'll be everyone will be at the same voting power, and until we start voting on roles where you do get sort of management teams within operations or marketing or whatever the expertises are. And then you can start incentivizing those people with DAO tokens. But we want it to be like sort of very like grassroots. We're all just like contributing our time as volunteers for now. And then once we get to it being sort of launched, if you will, more officially, that will be when we start, doing the incentives, focusing more on the tokenomics and how people can even buy into the DAO or fund the DAO. So if maybe Natter or the core team or someone says, this is a great effort, they're helping organize the street team, or can, they're talking with Matreshka and Cassius and Mr. Triplet on how to, make the most use of the street team. Like, let's fund this, let's put some money in here, and we can let the community decide whether it goes to the street team, whether it goes to digital ads, or wherever it goes. And so I think for them, I think they've been looking for an opportunity like that, where it's right now, if they can't hire for the role, if you have a DAO that's already sort of filling that role, you might as well just put dollars to that as long as you're seeing a return. So I think that's sort of the goal here, is we get to a point where we can do that. We have everyone having functional roles within the DAO. And it's not just like everyone sort of non-committal, passive, just voting when they can. There'll be a lot of members that are sort of passive like that, but you'll start to see an emerge, like the core group that, I don't want to call it core to confuse with the core team, but we're calling it like the management roles that are really potentially at some point doing it as a full-time job, getting paid just like any other organization. if you look at big DAOs like MakerDAO or ones that run a DeFi, other ones that run DeFi protocols, like they're huge organizations. They have tons of paid roles and tons of people working full time. And so that's what we want to get to. It doesn't mean that you won't have some people who work across multiple DAOs. I think that's also a vision for the DAO future is you can sort of modularize the work. So you could go write a proposal for one DAO on one day, and the next day you write a proposal for a different DAO, and you get incentivized or compensated for those the efforts you put into writing those proposals. But you don't need to spend full time, every day on the same DAO.
And like you said earlier in the conversation, DAOs are meant to kind of last forever and perpetuity beyond the initial conception, which kind of ties into what you said about making progress, getting to a point, getting it out there where it's ready, versus spending so much time delivering. Because people are going to come in, once people come into your DAO, they're going to make proposals themselves and change it as they see fit, depending on what the governance or the community needs anyways. But actually, I wanted to ask, how important do you see like scope being to like the formation of a DAO and keeping it like, because if the scope, like you said, is too wide, you might lose like actually any meaning or any potency to actually get anything done. Like where does scope tie in? Where do you see that tying into at least the initial stages, and then maybe as it matures?
Yeah, such a good question. To be honest, that's one of the challenges of like a DeSo community DAO is the scope is wide. And I think the idea is we might eventually have like a sub DAO kind of operating model. Much easier would have been to say like, we're just going to form the DeSo marketing DAO, or we're going to form, some really specific DAO. I think the challenge is that you can draw like 1 or 2 or 3 people into that, maybe 10 people into that, but you can't draw like the whole community into that. So that's why I chose to do the top-down approach and start at the widest one, because then we can get the framework to support these sub DAOs. That being said, it's not like the easiest route. So maybe the other route would have been easier, and eventually you build the umbrella or the parent DAO once you need it. So 2 different approaches. This one is definitely more challenging because people come in and they're like, okay, what exactly do we do here? How do I fit in? And I think that's where really like decentralizing the work efforts makes sense. So we've already started breaking out into working groups, which should help, where it's like you don't still have to think so wide, and your scope doesn't have to be wide. You can come into the DeSo community DAO and your scope can be just one initiative, and that's totally fine. And that helps you scope it down for understanding, and you can be very mission driven because you only have one thing to focus on. And then like you just have to have a few people or generalists at the top that are saying like, what's the big picture here? How are we supporting the ecosystem in a balanced way? And do that kind of planning. And different people have different skills. So some people will sort of self-elect to want to be more generalized, and other people will self-elect to be more specialized. And that's going to be a learning process. I don't think anyone's has a ton of experience in DAOs. I've definitely voted in a bunch of DAOs. I haven't been, and I've written proposals for DAOs. I haven't been like really, really active member of a DAO or starting a DAO like this one. So I think this is a new experience for everyone, but I think the hope is that people really can kind of self-elect, and it's not like a traditional corporation where one person's like, we're going to pick you and try and make you do something you don't want to do or fill a certain role. Right. Instead, it's like everyone knows themselves best and where their passions are and what they can execute on. And we're just going to have to go and do that. Obviously, we need some mechanisms. If someone isn't delivering on what they're trying to lead or something, we have to, reposition the DAO or get someone else into the role. But I think that's how we're starting it, where everyone can do where they think they can serve DeSo the best. And that's hopefully leads to a good outcome where we have the most passionate people becoming part of the DAO. We have the best people, that have the subject matter expertise serving each sub DAO or each working group or sub role. And we'll see how it goes.
The autonomous part of DAOs, the A in DAO, people often think of it as the code part, like, setting the terms of governance and executing on it based on certain rules. But it's actually, like you said, people find whatever they're maximally good at and just finding their place within this organization, but working autonomously like on what they're best at. that's you know, even more so than the code. It's like people knowing what role they're best in and finding their role within this organization that it doesn't need to be top down, like other people deciding what your role is. It's based on where you're maximally effective.
Yeah, there's
really
a
cool.
saying in startups or even traditional companies about, you know, hire the smartest people, then get out of their way. You know, a lot of times people say that, and then very few people actually do that. So I think that's what I'm hoping the DAO revolution brings about, is where that really happens. You know, you don't have one person hiring smart people and then like getting in their way all the time. And some people might view that happening on core, which is, you know, kind of one person leading that team rather than more of a horizontal org structure. I think I've experienced that in my startup, so I'm not just being critical of one thing. You know, there's been a time where I've been the one point sort of getting in everyone's way. And now I recognize that, obviously, and even at the time I was trying to avoid that. But it's really hard when you have an org structure like that, because if you don't really do that, there becomes like a lack of direction or clarity. And that still can happen in the DAO in theory, where it's like, where do we look for direction if no one's sort of leading the charge? So it is a new territory, and I think we have to prove that by getting some like founding rules in place. It's like really you just the reason why I think developers tend towards DAOs, adopt DAOs even better, is they're used to reading the documents, like the docs of development docs when they're using new softwares or a new framework. And the same thing as a DAO is like, you have to come in and you have to read the documents and you read those rules. And that's sort of the founding. Our first rule in the DeSo community DAO was like, how do we even vote? Like, what is a vote? Like, what does it mean? How does it pass? And that had to be the first rule, because we had to abide by that rule to make the first rule. So it was kind of like it's kind of recursion there. And so, you know, the same thing comes in when you get to the 10th rule or wherever we are. Like, you have to read back over the rules and say, okay, I understand how this works. Now I need to like try and figure out, do I need to make a new proposal to accomplish what I want to do? Or is there a precedent in here that I can just take this rule and start doing what I want to do under that rule? Like, it clearly states I can do it here. I'm just going to go do that and come back to the DAO with something to vote on, and we're good to go. Like, I don't even need to do anything else other than, you know, use this rule as my guiding light. So I think, you know, different types of personality types and characters are going to sort of jive better with this process. And then over time, as something gets really large, the personality types or the people who haven't worked in that style before, there'll be kind of an interface. You'll get like some, unfortunately, like some people managers, if you will, but we'll sort of find a way to make that not so corporate, but it's more like liaisons or something that help interface, where it's like, if you don't see where you fit in these rules, there's a person that helps sort of understand your strengths and where you might want to work, and, you know, helps you find your home, if you will, almost like content discovery or like finding your tribe, you know, doing that within a DAO. I think we will need that as DAOs get more prolific and you have people who aren't so like, let's read the docs and figure it out. And that's just a function of how humans work. So I'm excited to learn more, and as we grow this, and, you know, I think it's a new frontier for everyone.
It is, and I think it's extremely exciting. Once again, being, you know, we're often compared to pioneers of early days in America and gold rush, and it is very exciting to be here. And one of the reasons is because, like, it's up to us, like you said, to set up those initial rules. And I also like thinking, like, we get to create this initial culture in which we're inviting other people that would be, you know, more inclusive, more in using people's talent. Like you said, I love this part, because very often, you know, people work at the jobs that they hate, and that's their life. And like they do so much better when you are using their talents. And like you said, people often know better that they're good at, and hiring them and getting out of the way is the best way to let them showcase their talents and actually do what they can do best. So I absolutely love this new structure, and I'm looking forward to being part of it at some day, if you will want to have me in your top.
Yeah, we'd love to have you. I think one of the things we've tried to do is get people who like haven't really been involved in some stuff so much. So we sort of like, it's a little bit random how we're getting people in early, to be honest. Like, we'll just sort of suggest a name and try and find if they're interested or not. We want everyone to be interested first, so we're not just like bringing people, but we also don't want to just look like a you know, crew of like, maybe some people think are already like a tight-knit group. that sort of have their bias or something. So we've been a little bit thoughtful about that. Like we already, you know, ended up with like a couple DeSo voice people early on, and then it was like, well, we can't really add, you know, anymore for now. And then, you know, it's like we're trying to get a global distribution, a gender distribution, be very thoughtful about bringing in multiple perspectives, diverse perspectives into the group. So it's not just like, you know, we don't want to just be one of those factions that already exists in DeSo that seems like the problem rather than the solution. And then when we open, the goal is we really open for everyone. Like now, this was kind of just the unfortunate reality of how we had to do things to make sure we can make progress. But we're trying to get as quickly to a possible place where anyone can join. We just still need some sort of like barrier to entry, so we don't have people just kind of jumping in and sort of not really contributing and just making noise. Like we do want this to be a serious effort where when you come in, you have to have some time, commitment that you put in, and that you're there to contribute and help move the progress forward, rather than just using it as like a kind of social hangout spot. Even though we will sort of have some social hangouts that go, with it. So I think, it's going to evolve here pretty soon. I don't want to take any more of both of your time. I know we ran a little long here, but I think I'm very passionate about it. I think it's something where, even though we're trying to move quick, it's going to be a little bit of a slow effort just because we're trying to get everyone involved, more so than if you're just doing a really specific DAO for accomplishing a specific thing. Even like acquiring an asset, those DAOs are so straightforward. It's just capital intensive DAO rather than a labor intensive DAO. You can read about that in DAODAO's blog, but we're a labor intensive DAO, which even the DAODAO platform is not set up for. So we'll have to build a lot of our own tooling and stuff. This isn't just raise funds, go buy something. That's a pretty straightforward DAO. This is a very complex DAO. And that's why some of what we're doing is just building the foundation. Other DAOs we'll open source all our docs and stuff. Other DAOs could use the same framework to build an organizationally intensive DAO. So we're really just laying the groundwork here.
That's awesome. And for those of you watching, tomorrow at Wednesday, we are going to have a DAODAO release party with FunDAO, Slava, and a few other DAOs present in there. So if you're interested in DAODAOs, in DAOs, and Web3 and all of that, please join it. Darren, I hope you will be able to join us tomorrow. I don't know yet what time exactly, so I cannot tell you. We'll have to ask Slava, but that's going to be very exciting. And even if it's just a beta launch, like you said, it would still, start providing the tools for the people to start looking at it and working with them. And if you're watching this, I'm inviting you tomorrow to come participate in that. Check out Slava's page or FunDAO page, because they will for sure post the exact time and location, because we have a few social hangout spots, as Darren called them. So looking forward to seeing you there. And guys, if you want to add any closing thoughts or anything, please go ahead and do so if you would like to.
Nothing from me. I just appreciate you both having me. I think it's been a pleasure to talk a little bit more about my journey. I wasn't really expecting that. But if anyone else wants to go into detail on any other stuff, I'm pretty accessible. I'm definitely on VibeHut for video calls. Sometimes I go on Chime In. My DMs are open. I'm obviously on DeSo all the time. So reach out. I'm like I mentioned, generalist. So I'll find anything interesting. But
my folks every Tuesday at 7 a.m. Pacific Standard
Crypto
Time.
Talks was right before this.
You came from that right into this. So
I did. So finished Crypto Talks and came right into here. So I do a lot of back-to-back stuff. I sort of fall in between of protecting my time between like someone like Tyne or Tidjin on the platform, which is like kind of like ultra protective, not doing anything, to where I'll be very generous with my time with the ecosystem, but I'm very planned. So I don't take like unscheduled calls. If someone just gives me a call, I'll never pick up, because like I have a calendar, like things are scheduled. So you sort of have to tell me when you're trying to plan. If you just post it, but like something's happening right now, the chances of me dropping in are kind of low.
Very low, yeah.
Sometimes I try and make it if I can, but that's sort of how I stay very productive, is I block off times to be really focused, and then times that I can be generous and talk with folks. It's just, being very disciplined is how I run things. So, but if you DM me and you want to chat about something, anything DeSo, I'm always available.
Awesome. And we'll have Darian's profile and all his links in our show notes. Darian, it's a pleasure to have you on. I think it's a great initiative. And I like that you guys are keeping it small first and iterating and then letting it mature as you guys feel more secure in the foundation. I think that's amazing and really excited for what Community DAO is going to bring. And yeah, DAODAO launch tomorrow. I can't believe it's finally here. It's really exciting. It's
Yeah.
initially going to be beginning of April, right? So to be here finally is really nice.
It is, and hopefully this is the next, evolution of DeSo and what's possible here. So it's kind of been a wait and see, and now we'll see. So definitely looking forward to it as well, and very open mind around it. But we have to get in there, test all the tooling and stuff. And I think Ed Moss has been a strong leader over there, really pushing things forward, bringing a different perspective from what we've seen, from DeSo in the past. So I definitely appreciate that, and welcome the new chapter.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again, Darian, for generously giving us your time and talking to us about this. And like Luca mentioned, you will find all the links to follow underneath. So make sure to follow Darian. And although he is a generalist, he is posting a lot of amazing stuff about all kinds of things. So you will definitely find something that you will love. And we will see you at the next show.
Thank you.
Woo.